Individuals with spiritual gifts are not merely sensitive, they are aligned with frequencies that most other people cannot even perceive. They detect layers of reality that are not visible but are instead felt. This sensitivity, however, is a blade with two edges, a gift and at times a hazard. Some individuals will attempt to create distance from you, to quiet you, or to isolate you because your presence illuminates things they are not prepared to confront. Others will try to exploit this, knowing that people like you can sense, anticipate, heal, and absorb even what is not their own to bear. Being a person of high vibration can open sacred doors or draw you into wounds that were never yours to carry. Carl Jung once noted that the most sensitive among us are the first to perceive what the collective unconscious has not yet found language for. That is why you possess the power to either ascend or to lose yourself. Recognizing the signs is not just beneficial, it is crucial. Because if you do not comprehend what you carry, you will wear yourself out trying to conform to a world that does not grasp your frequency. But when you do understand, you begin to select with purpose what you allow in and what you release. So, in this video, I will reveal 13 things that only spiritually gifted people experience. Watch until the conclusion, because once you understand these signs, you will see that your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was the concealed map to your awakening. The first thing spiritually gifted people experience is environmental sensitivity. You perceive spaces in the same way most people perceive other people. Some locations deplete you while others energize you for no clear reason. And then there are those places you have hardly entered and already feel, I should not be here. It does not matter if it is a waiting room, a bedroom, or someone's residence. The space communicates with you, not with words, but with sensations. You pick up on the atmosphere. That is your energy field assessing the room before your rational mind has a chance to process it. Carl Jung said, the collective unconscious appears in atmospheres too. This means every space retains traces of the people who have occupied it, the unspoken dialogues, and the energy left behind. If your sensitivity is heightened, you feel all of that before a single word is spoken. Sometimes you attempt to dismiss it, to be logical and not overreact, but something inside you contracts. Eventually you learn that you are not imagining things, you are reading the field. And that is one of the initial signs of a spiritual sensitivity that operates far more deeply than most people comprehend. The second thing spiritually gifted people experience is this. Your body reacts before your mind does. Have you ever felt a chill unexpectedly, with no obvious cause, or a wave of nausea while speaking to someone who was smiling? Or perhaps a sudden weight in your chest or tension in your shoulders in a place where everything appeared fine? These signals are not arbitrary. Something real is shifting in your body when the energy changes. It is as if your system is continuously scanning the invisible and translating it into subtle symptoms. Sometimes it is like your body is saying, something is off here, and you learn that you must listen. Carl Jung believed the body is a living extension of the unconscious, that it carries memories, symbols, and messages, and that often the self, the center of the psyche, communicates through the body before the mind can process it. If you are spiritually sensitive, this becomes your personal language. Your body communicates, signaling what words have not yet identified. It warns, it hesitates, it rejects situations without you understanding why. The most difficult part is that you often doubt yourself. You think you are overreacting until you realize that every time you ignored those signals, you suffered the consequences. It is like your soul is using your body as a translator. Once you start to honor that language, everything changes. You protect yourself more effectively, you stand your ground with greater clarity, and you stop just perceiving the world. You start navigating it with precision. The third thing spiritually gifted people experience is an uncanny recognition from children, animals, and the elderly, not through words, but through presence. You have never needed to force a connection with them. It just materializes. Children observe you as if they are studying you from within. They become quiet, watch your movements, and sometimes walk directly up to you as if your presence is a sanctuary. Animals react in the same manner. A restless dog suddenly lies down at your feet. A cat brushes against you and curls up on your lap as if you are simply another part of nature. Elders initiate conversations unexpectedly, and within minutes they are sharing personal stories they have not even recounted to their own children. You do not request it, you do not try to make it occur, but it always does. It has been this way since you were young. There is an instinctive reading that these deeply connected beings possess, and when you are vibrating in truth, they sense it. It does not matter if it is a toddler, a stray dog, or a grandmother in her 80s. They know when someone is not being deceptive. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a domain of symbols, archetypes, and instincts. Beings that have not yet been conditioned to disconnect, like children and animals, access this domain naturally. When they encounter someone on that same wavelength, they recognize it, the coherence between who you are internally and what you express externally. This is not just a poetic concept, it is supported by science. Ethology, developmental psychology, and social neuroscience have all investigated this. Temple Grandin, in Animals in Translation, explains that animals perceive more acutely precisely because they are not obscured by language or social filters. They sense raw emotional states, something she herself, as an autistic person, says she experiences more clearly. To her, what we call energy is often just the sum of subtle physical cues, breath rhythms, muscle tone, and emotional congruence. Children, according to researcher Alison Gopnik in The Philosophical Baby, exist in a state of expanded attention with fewer filters. They perceive with their entire body. They sense energy, not context. And the elderly, many of whom return to that pre-social space, care less about what you say and more about how you are. So when these three groups, kids, animals, and elders, respond to you, it is not because of what you have done. It is because of who you are. That perception is not magic, it is ancient, it is real, and yes, it is measurable. Science calls it social interoception, nonverbal instinctive communication, or neuroaffective resonance. But you do not need to memorize the terms. Just reflect on how many times this has happened to you. And no, it is not a coincidence, it is coherence, felt by those who still feel. The fourth thing spiritually gifted people experience is feeling emotions that are not their own but that impact them as if they were. You are feeling fine, your day began well, then you walk past certain people, enter certain rooms, or overhear certain conversations, and something changes. Your chest constricts, your breathing alters, a nameless sadness emerges, or a sudden irritation arises. You try to rationalize it, but there is no clear origin because it is not yours. Spiritually sensitive people are familiar with this confusion. You start carrying emotions you never personally experienced. You leave simple interactions completely depleted. You exit social gatherings as if you have just completed an emotional marathon. And often you do not notice it immediately, only later when your body feels heavy, when your thoughts become muddled, and when you know something is wrong but cannot explain what. This type of emotional absorption has a name and scientific foundations. Psychology has studied it for decades. Some people are born with a more sensitive, more open, more receptive nervous system. They register other people's emotions before those people do. They feel the field. They detect the sorrow behind a smile, the anger in a tone, the exhaustion behind silence, and they absorb it as if their body does not know how to shield itself in time. Psychiatrist Judith Orloff describes this precisely in the Empath Survival Guide. At UCLA, she teaches that emotional empaths do not just notice other people's feelings, they internalize them. This is not spiritual fluff. It is emotional neuroscience. It is about hyperactivated nervous systems, more responsive brain regions, and a direct link between external emotion and internal reaction. Carl Jung believed that the collective unconscious operates in everyone, but only some people feel it as a living force. To him, these individuals exist in constant contact with the world's symbolic layer, and they feel it in their own bodies. The boundary between self and other is thinner, and so they live entangled, burdened, and overflowing with emotions that do not have a clear owner. With time, those who live this way learn to trace the signals, to track where the discomfort originated, and to return what is not theirs. But until then, it feels like chaos. You question yourself, you wonder if you are unstable, too sensitive, or emotionally fragile. But this is not weakness, it is exposure without a filter, and only someone truly open can feel this much. The fifth thing spiritually gifted people experience is waking up between 3 and 4 in the morning, often without provocation and with a strange clarity. It is not insomnia, it is not stress, it is something more subtle and ancient. You open your eyes in the darkness with a sense that something has summoned you. Your body is still, but your mind is awake. It is not confusion, it is awareness. And it happens so frequently that it ceases to feel random. Spiritually sensitive people often experience this for one key reason. They are pulled into the liminal state, that in-between zone when you are not quite dreaming and not fully awake, where logic fades and the unconscious is wide open. In neuroscience, it is called the hypnagogic state, a space where dreams, intuition, and memory blur into vivid clarity. Buddhist monks call this time the hour of the empty mind. In Christian mysticism, it is the spiritual watch, when the soul is most receptive to the divine. Carl Jung saw it as a psychic portal, a moment when the ego softens and the self rises without resistance. He once wrote, "The unconscious is like the night. It is where the truest images visit us." That is why many people, when waking at this hour, sense presences, receive insights, get crystal clear ideas, or simply feel a strange sense of meaning or emptiness, but an emptiness full of message. This kind of awakening is not a disorder. It is a calling. The world may be asleep, but something in you is wide awake, and the more you ignore it, the more persistent it becomes. Because that call, it is not coming from your head. It is coming from the oldest part of who you are. The sixth thing spiritually gifted people experience is dreaming in ways that feel more real than waking life. Vivid, prophetic, or recurring dreams that stay with you. These are not just dreams, they are full-body experiences. You feel them, your soul reacts, and the memory lingers. You wake up with full sentences in your head, physical sensations that stick, and messages that feel like they had a very specific destination. Sometimes what you dreamed plays out days later. Sometimes the same dream reappears, down to the details, for years. Sometimes you dream of people you have never met, but feel like you have known them forever. Spiritually gifted people have a more open dream channel because they do not treat dreams as noise, but as language. And that is exactly what dreams are. Carl Jung devoted much of his work to dream study. To him, dreaming was how the unconscious speaks to the conscious, not through words, but through images, not through logic, but through symbols. And symbols, he said, are the language of the self. The images that show up in your dreams are not random. They are pieces of your deeper story trying to surface. Recurring dreams, repeated places, and persistent emotions are all signs that an archetypal truth is pushing through. It might be a wound you have ignored, a gift you have buried, or a truth your conscious mind is not ready to admit. Modern studies on lucid dreaming and REM brain activity show that in those states, the brain processes emotions, memory, and symbolic narratives intensely. Highly sensitive people access more of that content, which is why their dreams have weight and substance. You might have learned to dismiss dreams, to chalk them up to mental static. But if you pay attention, you will realize some of them told you everything you needed to know long before life confirmed it. The seventh thing spiritually gifted people experience is this lifelong sense that they are here for something greater, even if they cannot quite name what it is. It is hard to put into words because it is not a logical certainty. It is more like an existential itch, a constant feeling that something is missing and that the missing piece is not out there. It is in here. You might try to go with the flow, study, work, build, and consume, but eventually it all starts to feel hollow. What drives others does not drive you. What fulfills others leaves you empty because there is something inside you that has not been activated yet. Something that wants to remember, reconnect, and align with a mission you have not quite identified but deeply feel. Carl Jung called this the call of the self, the moment when the ego begins to lose its grip and a deeper force starts to rise. It is uncomfortable and disorienting. It can feel like everything is falling apart. Your motivation, your sense of direction, your connection to what used to feel certain. But in truth, it is the beginning of your awakening. This is where many people start the first knock of the spiritual path, and that awakening is rarely graceful in the beginning. It unravels you, disrupts your balance, and breaks old narratives, but only to make space for your true path to emerge, the thing you came here to do, the thing only you can bring into the world. The eighth thing spiritually gifted people experience is a rejection of superficiality and a near physical exhaustion when forced into meaningless social interactions. It is not that you do not like people, you just cannot stay long in spaces where you have to pretend to be someone you are not. Small talk at social events, overly formal meetings, and gatherings where everyone is performing something, they drain you. You try to smile, you try to play along, you try to blend in, but your body starts to feel heavy, your mind drifts, and suddenly you are wiped out, as if your energy is being siphoned off in real time. All you want is to leave, or better yet, be somewhere real. People with spiritual sensitivity feel this often, not because they think they are better, but because they feel deeper. You pick up on what is not being said, you sense the disconnect between words and energy, and that creates static inside you. You notice when someone is faking interest, hiding pain, or putting on a face, and it pulls you out of presence. It disconnects you. It exhausts you. Carl Jung explained this through the concept of the persona, the social mask we all wear to function in the world. But those on the path of individuation, the journey to becoming who they truly are, find that wearing this mask too long becomes unbearable. It weighs you down, it lies, it traps. In today's world with social media, this is amplified. What used to be a mask we wore in person has become a full-time performance. Social media turned everything into a showcase. Emotion became content, spirituality became aesthetic, and pain became engagement. For those who feel the world raw, all of it just rings false. Spiritually gifted people do not just dislike the superficial, they feel it as an energetic shock. Scrolling your feed can feel like walking through a corridor of personas, all competing for attention. Every post feels like it is shouting, "See me." Every video is trying to prove something. And even the ones that seem deep, you sense what is missing. The substance, the truth, the soul. Your system reads the vibe, not the caption. That is why you leave social media more tired than when you opened it. You spent too long exposed to a frequency that is not yours, one that is loud, anxious, competitive, and obsessed with showing, not being. The fatigue you feel is not social dysfunction, it is heightened awareness. You cannot settle for the shallow anymore because your soul has tasted what is real. That is why you crave conversations that go straight to the heart, people who do not need a performance, and silences that feel like rest, not awkwardness. Because your energy is not just trying to exist, it is trying to connect. And if you find yourself growing less tolerant of the fake, know this: it is not social weakness, it is spiritual maturity. The ninth thing spiritually gifted people experience is feeling out of place, even around good people. This might be one of the hardest feelings to explain. You are in a calm environment, with people you care about, nothing is wrong, and yet something inside you does not feel present. It is like your body is there, but your soul is not. This sense of disconnection has an explanation, and it is not about ego, it is about energy. The Hermetic law of vibration, known since ancient Egypt and expanded by philosophers like Hermes Trismegistus, teaches that everything in the universe vibrates. Nothing is still, nothing is fixed, and real connection only happens when those vibrations resonate. Carl Jung acknowledged this when he said there are meetings that nourish and meetings that deplete. People with awakened souls vibrate differently. They sense the room, they catch the micro-tensions, and often they find themselves in harmony with the space, but not in sync. That is why you can feel out of place, even at home, even among friends, even when loved. Because it is not about affection, it is about alignment. And when the energy does not match, your body feels it long before your mind does. Some call it energetic sensitivity, others call it spiritual awareness. Whatever the term, the more awake you become, the more sensitive you are to this quiet misalignment between who you are and what surrounds you. It does not mean you are ungrateful or lonely. It means you need truth in order to feel present. The 10th thing spiritually gifted people experience is attracting spontaneous confessions, even when they never ask a single question. You have been there. The conversation barely starts, and suddenly someone is sharing things they have never told anyone. Family secrets, old traumas, deep personal doubts. Sometimes it is someone you barely know. Sometimes it is a total stranger. And all it takes is your silent presence, and something opens. It is not charisma, it is not curiosity, it is energy. Spiritually gifted people carry a presence that does not judge, does not invade, it simply holds space. Even in silence, you transmit listening. Your presence relaxes the body, soothes the vibration, and people feel safe enough to drop the armor, to finally be real. It is as if something inside you quietly says, "I can hold this, go ahead." Carl Jung deeply understood this. He said, "A true therapist is not the one who gives advice, but the one who can carry the weight of another's unconscious without trying to fix it." That is the impact sensitive people have. They act as symbolic mirrors. The other person sees themselves, hears themselves, and begins to recognize themselves, and without even realizing it, begins to heal just by giving voice to what has been trapped for years. It is beautiful, but it is also heavy, because by the end of the day, you have carried emotional weight that was not yours. You have held space for pain others could not handle, and even without saying much, you gave more than most ever do with 1,000 words. Being that kind of presence is a gift, but it is also a responsibility, because often you are the only space where someone finally feels allowed to be human. The next thing spiritually gifted people experience, and I know many of you watching have too, is this feeling of being isolated even when surrounded by people. It is a different kind of loneliness, not about being alone. It is about not feeling together. You could be at a party, at a family dinner, or in a stable relationship and still feel completely out of sync, like you are watching life through some invisible window, like you are always slightly out of phase. This loneliness does not come from a lack of love. It comes from a lack of depth, from the exhaustion of trying to fit in, from the ache of feeling too much in a world that feels too little, and from the silent awareness that most people are not really present. They are just repeating patterns, filling space, and avoiding silence. Carl Jung said, "The path to becoming your true self starts with a separation from the crowd, from the masks, from the noise." The call of the self, he said, often begins with a void, a quiet rupture between the life you are living and the life you know you are meant to live. Spiritually awakened people feel this sooner. What once made sense no longer does. Shallow bonds do not hold. Small talk feels heavy. Being constantly surrounded without true connection makes you feel lonelier than actual solitude. But this loneliness is not rejection. It is transition. It marks the beginning of a deep shift from needing to belong at any cost to aligning with your own truth, even if it costs you the company of others for a while. It is not easy, but it is real. And it is often the first step back home, not the home of bricks and walls, but the inner home you have spent your life trying to remember. Another thing spiritually gifted people experience. When you speak the truth, it shakes people. It does not matter the tone. You could speak gently, kindly, even hesitantly. But once the truth leaves your mouth, the energy shifts. People tense up, the air gets heavy, and faces close. Suddenly, you are too intense, too negative, or too dramatic. But deep down, you know it was not what you said. It was what got exposed. Spiritually sensitive people have a direct relationship with truth, not because they are morally superior, but because they feel what is off. And when they speak, it is not to attack. It is to name what has been avoided, to break the thick silence no one wants to touch, and to acknowledge the elephant in the room everyone pretends not to see. Carl Jung said that accessing deep parts of the unconscious also activates the collective shadow, everything society tries to hide. And anyone who becomes a mirror to that shadow, even unintentionally, becomes a threat because your presence reminds others of what they are trying to forget. That is why you have been rejected for stating the obvious, labeled a troublemaker for trying to fix what is clearly broken, and misunderstood for simply being honest. The world is so used to half-truths, strategic silence, and appearances that anyone aligned with the real becomes unbearable. Today, speaking the truth is a spiritual act because it is not just about words, it is about vibration. It is about reminding people of the part of them that still feels, even if they pretend not to. And the final thing spiritually gifted people experience is this constant longing for something sacred, something they cannot name but feel as a living absence. Since early on, you have felt like you are searching for something, a place inside you have never seen but somehow remember, a presence you have never met but deeply miss, a homesickness that does not belong to this life but colors everything you seek. This longing comes in waves, sometimes in the quiet of the night, sometimes in nature, sometimes in the middle of a deep, unexplainable ache, and you realize regular life does not satisfy. The routines, no matter how functional, do not fill you because what you are missing is not outside. It is above or maybe within. Carl Jung said, the deepest symbol of the unconscious is the self, the total image of the soul. And that, even without knowing it, we are all trying to return to that wholeness. That is the real spiritual journey, back to your center, back to who you were before you forgot who you are. Spiritually gifted people feel this call more intensely. They do not want distraction, they do not want to numb out. They want to return home, even if they do not know where that home is yet. And yes, that longing often hurts because the modern world keeps trying to stuff the sacred with noise. But that ache you carry is not failure. It is a signal. It is the self-calling. It is the memory of something you once were and are trying to become again. Call it God, source, presence, or wholeness. What matters is you feel it. And that feeling, that is the beginning of your path. Maybe you came here thinking you would relate to one or two of these things, but if you saw yourself in many or in all, know this. It is not coincidence, it is a path. All of these things you recognized are signs that something in you is awake in a world that is still sleeping. And while it may feel lonely, it is the soul's choice. It is preparation. Carl Jung said, those most connected to the invisible often carry the deepest wounds of the visible. And that true individuation is not about becoming special, it is about becoming whole. And becoming whole means you will have to walk through the chaos, through loss, through pain, because the healing you bring to the world is the same healing you had to find on your own. And as heavy as that might feel, it is also your compass. Because when you understand what is happening within you, you begin to understand what is happening around you. You stop accepting everything, you stop absorbing everything, and you start choosing consciously what you let in and what needs to go.